Hello everybody and welcome to the Syntax Byte. My name is Ryan, and in this video we're going to create a quick chat application with Vue.js, Socket.io, and a little bit of Express.js thrown in. I'm just going to do a quick demo here for you. So what the final application is going to look like is we have the chat. I've already logged in as a guest over here. I'm actually going to pick a username and log in as Ryan over here, and so we can see over here that Ryan has joined. Ryan can go ahead and say hello, and the guest over here can say hello back. It shows up as anonymous. Very, very simple. So it's just a very simple chat application. Scroll works on both sides. So really simple, good thing to know if you're looking to get some experience with Socket.io and Vue.js. So yeah, let's jump right into it. I'm going to go ahead and close these down. Close that off. Backtrack there. And okay, so the first thing that we need to do when we're getting started here is go ahead and create a directory that will hold our application. So the way that we're going to do that is just to go make directory, and then I'm going to call it fireside chat. And so the next thing we're going to do is just change directory into that directory, and we're going to do an npm init. So if you don't have Node on your system, you will need to install that, and then just go into the directory and type npm init in the command line. Go ahead and hit enter. It's going to ask for a package name. Fireside chat is fine. Version 1 is fine. Description, an amazing chat application. Doesn't really matter. We're not going to be putting this on like the npm site or anything like that, so it doesn't really matter what your description is, but I'll go ahead and type one in there. Our entry point defaults to index.js. If you want to use that, that's fine. I'm going to make chat.js, just very clear that that's our server-side application, as opposed to the index.html, which is client-side. Test command, don't worry about it. Get repository, we don't have one. Keywords, we're not uploading this, doesn't matter. Author, I might as well put Ryan. License, ISC, I'll put MIT. Again, it doesn't matter. Is this okay? Yes. So that's perfect. So the next thing that we want to do is go ahead and install our applications. So we want to go do npm install npm install --save. That's going to tell npm to add these packages to the package.js dependencies. And then go ahead and do express at 4.16.3. That makes sure that we get a high version of Express. Otherwise, sometimes it installs version 1, I believe. And then just do socket.io. And so it's going to go ahead and install those for us there. We get a couple of warnings that there's no repository field. Again, don't worry about that. We don't need to get a repository for this application at this time. You can always add one later. So with those done, I'm going to go ahead and open up Atom. In the directory, you can use, of course, whatever text editor you like, but I like Atom. And if you do have Atom, you can just do Atom and then the location you want to open. In the case of this directory, just do dot, and it will open it, and it won't keep it running here. You'll get a new line. So you see the package.json is done there. Perfect. We have all our node modules. So let's go ahead and create our files. So the first file that I'm going to create is index.html. It's going to be our client-side HTML file, and I'm going to put my JavaScript in here as well, just for the sake of the tutorial. I'm also going to create that chat.js file. Okay. And then the next thing that I'm going to create is a new folder. We'll call it styles, or style, and then new file in there is style.css. The reason we create a new folder is so that we can expose it as a static files folder for the Express web server. Okay, so I'm not going to worry about style right now. We have chat.js and we have index.html. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to get our web server up and running and our index.html file displayed. So in order to do that, I'm just going to create a basic HTML file. If you type HTML on Atom, hit enter. There you go. I'm going to add a title. This is our fireside chat. And we'll go ahead and give it a header. We should see this file when we start our web server. So how do we start our web server? That is over in chat. .js And so First of all, fair game, and since this JavaScript file is going to be ran with Node, we can go ahead and use ES 2015 features. It's not a big deal. In our index file, we're going to need to stick with stuff that is browser safe, but the chat.js file will never be ran in the user's browser, so we're good to go ahead and use ES6 without any extra extensions or setup or anything like that. So we're going to use constant express. This is the express library. This is our web server here. Require express and constant app equals express. So we just call that express function. That gets that set up for us. We also need a HTTP server. We're building that with app. And then we are also going to need socket.io. So for this, we'll do io equals require socket.io. So we don't actually need socket.io, of course, to get the HTML file to display, but we might as well just add it in here while we're doing the rest of our requirements. And we pass that the HTTP server. Okay. So next what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and do app.use/style. We're going to set up that static files folder. So express.static, and that is going to be __ name. So the directory that we're in right now +/style. Perfect. So that'll set up that folder to be used for static files. Otherwise it won't work. And then we're also going to set up a route. So we're going to say that when you go to /, so basically just when you go to the site's homepage, no additional things, just when you go to localhost, this is what you're going to get. We got a request and a response. This is an arrow function. Again, we're perfectly with that ES6 in here, and we're going to say response.send file. So we're going to send a file. There's no templates for this app. You could always add them. Index.html. So when you go to the site, send the index.html file. This is literally all we need Express to do for this application at this time. Express can do so much more, templates, all that sort of stuff. We literally just need to say you have one route and send the file. Very good. The next thing that we need to do is start up that HTTP server. So http.listen, we're going to give it a port 3000, and what to do once it's listening, empty arrow function, and then we're just going to console.log a nice little message, listening on port 3000. There you go. So now as soon as we run this, we should get the listening on port 3000 message, be able to go to that web page and get the file. So what I'm going to do to run it is just in the command line here, type node chat.js. Everything appears to have gone right. Let's check if that is the case. Localhost 3000. And so we do see our file. Awesome. So it's not very exciting. It's a static file. We could have done that without a web server, but that's okay. So we've got our file displayed there, and that's the first step to being on our way to making the app. So the next thing I'm going to do is another little bit of setup. I'm just going to get Vue.js set up on the client side. We'll test it out, make sure it works, and then we'll start defining socket.io stuff. So to get Vue.js, the way I'd recommend is just Google Vue.js, go here, click on Get Started, scroll down, and find the development version. They've switched CDNs in the past, so I'd recommend just getting it from here, and you'll get the latest and greatest CDN that has the latest and greatest version of Vue for sure. And then you can just copy that over into your index.html file. Where I would put it is right here at the end of the body. Okay. Perfect. And so the next thing that we want to do is also in our body, we want to create a div with an ID of app. And this is where our Vue.js app is going to be active. And inside of this app, we are going to print a variable named hello world. And so we need to create the Vue.js app that has that hello world variable in its data object. Okay, so to do this, we're just going to do an inline script. You can obviously create another script if you want, and if you're going to be expanding this app in any way, shape, or form, I would, but for simplifying the tutorial here, I like to keep as few files as possible so we're not constantly switching between things. So for this case, we're just going to create it in here. And what I'm going to do is we have a var app. That's going to be our app. It's an instance of Vue, and Vue needs to be passed an object. We need an element property, and that is going to point to the app ID. We need a data object, and so that is going to have our hello world in it. And that's just going to be a simple string of text that says hello world. So when Vue.js is working, we'll be able to tell that it's working because when we load the page, this hello world here will be replaced with the text. Okay, so let's go ahead and reload it and see if it works. And it does not. Because we missed the new keyword here. So make sure you have that new keyword there. Sorry about that, guys. So that should work there. Awesome. Okay, so now that Vue.js is up and running, I want to get socket.io up and running on both the client and the server. So we're going to start with the client just because we're working over here. And so what we need to do is, first of all, add in the script that's necessary. So we're going to go with a script. The source is going to be equal to /socket.io/socket.io.js. This file is provided by the socket.io package for development purposes. For production, you might want to use a different setup, but for development, this is going to work just fine. So the next thing that we want to do is in here, we're going to have a created method, and in there we are going to say socket equals IO. That's an IO function. That's the function that sets up socket IO. Just to ensure we never get undeclared variable here, I'm going to set it up here as null up at the top, and so that will be null until it's been created, and we shouldn't be doing any socket.io stuff before then at all. So, but yes, I want it to be a global variable, not a local variable. So if I had put the var down here, it would end up being a local variable, and the rest of the app wouldn't be able to access it. This way, with scope, it works correctly how we want it to work. So that should be all we need to set it up in the client side. It should just connect. But we need to make sure that the server is ready to receive that connection. And so what we are going to do is, we've already set it up here, so it should actually work fine, but nothing would happen. So I'm going to do io.on connection. So when a client connects, what do we want to do? Well, first of all, we want to get that socket, that individual client's socket, that connection to that client. And then what we want to do is we want to just console.log someone connected. We don't know who, but someone has connected. And we're going to let that know in the console log. This is an arrow function again, so hopefully the syntax is all right there for you guys. So what should happen now is, first of all, we made changes to the chat file, so I want to restart that. Okay. And then I want to go ahead and refresh this page, and I should see someone connected. So perfect, so we know that that connection has been made. Obviously, we haven't had any other code, so it's just connecting for apparently no reason right now. But it is connecting, and we can tell that the client has made a connection. So the next thing that we want to do is set up the client so that there's a message box, and when you type something in it, it gets sent over. So in order to do that, I am going to create a form on the client side here. And so we can go ahead and just delete this hello world. We're not going to need that at all. And so what I want here is I want a form. When it's submitted, you can do this .prevent to do event prevent default automatically, so you don't have to add that to your code every time, which is nice, because otherwise if you submitted this form, it would like take you to another page. But with .prevent, Vue.js will just automatically not do that. So on the submit, and this at just means event, then we can call our function, so that is going to be send message. And in here, in this form, we want an input with type equal to text. This is going to be our little message box, placeholder, message ... And then what we want to do is we want to do v model : value equals message. And so what that's going to do is we can add a message variable down here on our data object. And that means that the value of the input file, so what's in the text box, will always be equal to the value of this variable. And it is two-way binding. So if you make changes to this variable, it will show up in the text box, and if someone changes the text box, this variable will be that new value. So that's good. Easy way to capture the input there. Next thing we need is an input with a type equal to submit, and we can make the value send. So that'll be a send button. Close out the form there. Okay, perfect. So the next thing that we need to do is add that little method. So what we can do is create an object called methods. Actually, I might create it above the created thing. I think I like the way that's laid out a little bit better. So we're going to go methods. This is an object just like data, except it contains a list of functions rather than a list of variables or values or properties or whatever you want. This is a list of methods or functions in our application. So what we did is we need to send message. That's what we called it. That is a function. Doesn't take anything. But then what we go ahead and do inside of send message is we want to say socket. So even though the socket's created down here, remember created runs when the application is like created or whatever. So this code will actually run after. So we got socket. We want to emit. So emit something to the server, send out an event. There was a message. That's the thing, the identifier for the event. And we want to pass it over with this.message, the contents of this variable. And then after we've sent that out, we want to go ahead and say this.message is an empty string. And that's just going to clear the input from the box. So the box will empty out when that happens. So what we should be able to see now is if we refresh this, we have a box. I say hello, hit enter, and that did not work right, did it? Because it reloaded the page. Because there is a missing this. So that was good. So let me say hello. And yes, it clears it properly. There's no page reload. So make sure you have those commas between those brackets there. And so that sent it out to the server. The server like has no idea what's going on. It still says like someone connected, but it's getting this random event. It's like, I don't know what to do with this, man. So what we can do after that is we need to actually tell the server how to respond to that event. And so what we can do is we can say socket.on, and when you emit something from one client, it goes to all the other clients. So all the like sockets are going to get it. And we can do socket.on message. So when there was a message, remember that is the identifier we used here. When there is a message, we're going to take that message, put it through this function. So what we're going to do is we're just going to console.log message, just for now. And so what will happen is we will see that message on the server in the console. So again, we did make a change here. And so we need to go ahead and do this. And then just go like that, and we'll say hello, and we should see that it showed up here in the server. So awesome. So we successfully have these messages transferring between the client to the server, but they're never coming back to the client. So the client is just sending off these chat messages. Nothing's ever coming back to the client. So I mean, only the server administrator can see the server, so this isn't a very helpful chat room. So what we want to do is create a nice little list of the messages on the client as well. Okay, so what we're going to do is, number one, does it say someone connected? No. Okay, no more someone connect. Okay, good. Okay, so what we want to do is create a little unordered list. So this is how I am going to display messages. There's multiple ways to do this, but I find that the unordered list is a pretty flexible way. You can style it to look a lot of different ways, and it works really nice. So what we are going to need to do is create an unordered list. UL, I'm going to give it an ID of chat box. And then we're going to have a list item, and then we're going to use the v4 to kind of loop an array, and message in messages. Okay, and note that this message is going to be different than the contents of this message. So just something to keep in mind. This won't be conflicting at all in the namespace. So we have a list item that, and then inside of the list item, we're going to do this message. Again, it's going to come from here, not here, so that's good. Close out the list item, close out the unordered list. Okay, so we have a list of messages. Also, we need to add this to our data. Just initialize it as an empty array at the start of the application. And it's an array that will hold all the messages that the application receives over the course of the lifetime. But we still aren't going to be adding anything into there. So if we refresh the page right now, it is just an empty list. It doesn't actually do anything. So we need to say, hold on here. So I have a mounted function, which is called after the created function. And in there, we're going to put all our socket on codes. So we can do socket.on message. So when a message is received, we're going to call this function, pass over the message. And what do we want to do with that? Well, first of all, we want to add it to that array. So that's app.messages.push. Why do we use app instead of this? We use app instead of this because this, in the context of the callback function, is different. So make sure you use app.messages.push. Push that message onto the array. Okay, that's awesome. And that should work for now. There's a little bit more we have to do there, but I will show you that after we add our styles. So this should now work. If we say hello, nothing happens. Sorry, this won't work yet. What we do need to do is go over here, my apologies, change this console.log to actually emit the message back to the client. We didn't do that. So what we have to do is do an io.emit. This is going to emit it out to all of the sockets. And so we're going to do an io.emit message. And what we're going to do is just send it that message. So MSG here we have. Okay, so now we're going to need to restart the server, refresh the page, say hello, and we get the message back on the client. Now the super cool thing here, what is the big idea? The big idea is that if I click in here and I go to localhost :3000, open this up, drag it out so we have two separate browser windows, please, Firefox, please, and I say what's up, it appears on both clients. So one client sends a message out, every client gets it. So this is like the basics of the chat app. There is no usernames, but I mean, those anonymous chat apps have been pretty popular around the internet. I mean, we could just upload this and act like it's the biggest idea since sliced bread, and we'd be good to go. So this is pretty cool. There's a couple of issues with it though. A couple of things I don't like, and I just want to fix before we go ahead and wrap up this part, is that, well, every time I send a message, the box here keeps moving down. I can also send empty messages, which isn't great, but not a huge problem. The box keeps moving down. It's just gonna keep moving down, like, and then like the page is gonna like scroll. It's really weird. So what I want to do is I want to add some styles to the chat box, so it actually works more like a chat and less like an unordered list. So what we can do is go ahead and add in our style.css here. We're gonna add chat box. Remember that was the ID of the unordered list. We're gonna go ahead and give it a height of 200 pixels, a max width of 400 pixels, and we're gonna go ahead and give it an overflow Y of scroll. So if you've got too much content to fit in your little height of 200 pixels, scroll it. Okay, and so the next thing that we need to do is, of course, add that into the head here. So link rel equals style sheet href equals /style/style.css. Go ahead and link that into our little styles there, and perfect, we have this better styled box. Hello. So it's still working. Better styled box. The issue with it is, though, if I actually do go ahead and add a bunch of empty messages here, it keeps scrolling to the top. So it never like really scrolls to the bottom like you would kind of expect a chat box to do. Would always scroll to the bottom. So what we can do to go ahead and fix that is, it's a little bit interesting with Vue.js, because obviously when we change the array, it changes the content of the website. But if we want to scroll to the top of the box, or sorry, the bottom of the chat box, we need that chat box to already have the new message in it before we tell it where to scroll to, right? So if we just put the code right under here to change, scroll it to the bottom, it's not going to scroll to quite the bottom. It's going to scroll to the second last message, which isn't what we want. So what we need to do is we need to tell Vue.js, I got some code I want to run after you update the client already. After you update the HTML, then I want you to run this code. So the way we do that is we do app $next tick. And so this code will run after the website has been updated to reflect the changes of the new message coming in. So what we can do from here is we need to get our message box the very traditional old school JavaScript way. If you had jQuery installed, you could use it here, but I wouldn't add it if you aren't using it for like Ajax or something else like that, because it would just be a waste of a library. It's a lot of load time to make that line a little simpler. And then you can say message box.scrollTop is message box.scroll height, and this will scroll it to the bottom of the chat box. So now if I go ahead and send a bunch of empty messages, you can see that the scroll bar gets smaller, but it scrolls to the bottom every time. So that's a lot better than what we have going on here, where it just keeps getting like smaller but never scrolls to the bottom. Now it will scroll to the bottom, so that's perfect. So with that, I'm going to end the part here. In the next part, we'll be having a look at adding that awesome Fire background, as well as a couple more important things like adding usernames and putting some finishing touches on the application. Hope to see you guys in the next part. If you do enjoy the video, please subscribe to the channel. I have lots of Vue.js stuff going, lots of web development. I know the channel's been a little low on the activity lately. I am in university, and sometimes the workload doesn't always enable me to make too many videos. But it is summer right now, so I'm definitely going to be trying to pump out videos at least once a week or so. So definitely subscribe to the channel. It really helps me out, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in part 2.